Hi there. I'm going to see what happens. See if anybody's here today. Oh, hi. So just for a little while, glad to see you. Just for a little while, before I take my glasses off, I'm going to look at the, hi. I'm going to look at the side and read some comments. I'm so glad to see all of you. And I noticed something fascinating. I couldn't wait to tell you all. As soon as I noticed it, something bent my head today. Do you remember, if you've been, I'm going to fuzz with this for a little bit. If you've been following these live streams for a little bit, you may remember some things I said previously. And do you remember, I think it was 2 live streams ago. I haven't done that many, but I talk a lot, so I don't know which is in which. Do you remember I was really sensitive to the energies. I always am, but I was sensitive to the energies behind me. And I said, something's the wrong shape. It feels like something's the wrong shape behind me. And, you know, I'm always talking about how nothing's random. Hi, Tim. Nothing's random. And the whole world is our mirror, our moving mirror. And there's language. We're just in a sea of language that comes to us in objects and circumstances, form and circumstances, and everything moves. So sometimes I have noticed, like when I'm channeling or when I'm talking, especially when I'm channeling, I forget what I've said almost as soon as I've said it. I forget completely. And so I have to go back and listen. And when I have gone back and listened, I heard some things come out of my mouth that were the answers to the questions that I'd asked, but I didn't recognize it at the time I spoke. And then when I heard it the following morning, like I watched that this morning, and suddenly I made this connection and I was like, oh my God, duh. And I saw something in the background and I left it up so that you guys could see it, because I'm going to take it down. We're going to fix it right now, because I suddenly recognized something. I made a couple of connections. So many interesting things occur to me when I watch the live feed in the morning. I usually don't do it right afterward. One thing that I noticed, I noticed so many things, but one thing that I noticed is that I squint. I'm always like, my eyes look so small. And I thought, well, do they always look this small? And I asked my daughter and she's like, no, that doesn't usually happen. And I was realizing, and I was like, well, is it the makeup? What is it? It is the light. I'm looking right at the light. So it's partially that, but then I realized that when I'm channeling too, like there's just weight. This room is also very full of light. It's not coming from this light. It's ambient light, and it's behind it. So we're being joined by energies because I know some of the information that's going to come through. But I wanted to wait and tell you what I observed in the background. So I listened to a couple of live feeds, and one thing that I heard from 2 live feeds ago is that I answered my own question when I told some kind of story that even when I told it, I thought that it seemed to me like I was going off topic. And I should know by now, I do know by now, that everything that comes through for a reason. No matter how wonky it seems, no matter how much it seems like I'm blithering and something just occurs to me and I drift off topic. But really, if I pay attention, I might not see it right away, but usually if I pay attention, there's something there. It's going to loop back around and it's going to come in for a reason. And I know that everything is sequential. Like my sessions with people are all sequential. Whatever happens in one session with one person always is linked and informs the next session with the next person. It's really been fascinating that way. And I know that the live streams are that way too. So I was watching them from the beginning. And I heard myself go off topic and start talking about this turtle that I rescued. And the whole time I have had this question in the background about what am I missing? How do I get out of this triangle? How do I get out of this triangle? How do I open this up? And what am I doing? What needs to happen so that we can get through? And then when I was listening to the live feed, I heard myself a couple of times say things, and I realized that I had just spoken the answer, but I didn't recognize it as the answer when I said it. So there are two things that came through, and we have already been given the answer to several questions that I posed for the group. And then I'll tell you what's in the background. I'll see if you can see it. But then I'm gonna anyway, I left it up all day because I thought I'm gonna take it down when I just want to see if they see it. Maybe they will. So I told this story about the turtle, and I heard myself say, the story was that I had gotten attached to this little turtle that I rescued. It was a snapping turtle, a baby snapper, very aggressive. I loved it anyway, even though it had all these behaviors, and it did not love me back. But it really liked the fact that I fed it. It was getting really obese, and I kept it too long. That's the story that I told, is that I held on to this thing too long. Even though it did not need me anymore, I was really fond of it. And so I kept feeding it. And even though my guides have told me that I have to detach and really release, the emphasis on release, because there's no hostility at all on my end. But there might be a certain amount of, I don't know. I actually don't know. And it's also none of my business. But there have been people in the triad that were reptilian. And because I loved them, I couldn't bring myself to really mean it when I cut the cords. I mean, I've done all this, light worker shit, sever your cords, cut your cords, do the cord pulling, and it wasn't working. And part of the reason it wasn't working is because there was also circuitry, and I don't work alone. I need to work with the other two people, or at least one. There has to be a majority. And I didn't have the majority. So I also have been unable to rebalance the thing. Needed to be rebalanced a lot. The triangle, both triangles. So I was given information about the geometry. But what I heard myself say was that this turtle, while I kept feeding it, while I still had it, I said it took a big triangular chunk out of my daughter's fish. It badly injured my daughter's fish. And it didn't need to, it was fed, it was very well fed. It didn't need to eat the passing fish. It just saw something and felt like it. So it took a great big triangular chunk. And I realized that my daughter, I'm my daughter's fish. I'm a Pisces. Pisces is the fish, sign of the fish. So I'm thinking, well, the reptilian, who my guides have said, you have to sever your ties because otherwise this thing's going to kill you. You keep feeding, energetic cords, they feed off of your energy. And because I loved it, I couldn't quite sever it and mean it. At any rate, I held on to it for too long. So yes, I've released the releasing of the information, because one of the things that came through was that I had to really examine where I was complicit in maintaining the dominant control structure. What is my part in that? Because even though it's kind of like, where else does that go, I guess is the question. If I have anchored the church and my energy is in the church, and I love the church, am I hanging on to it? Is there what of me could I potentially adjust? And so I found a couple of things. But first I'm going to see, ow, this thing is hurting my head. I wonder, so the turtle story was the one thing that I found. The other thing that I found was, let's see if I can adjust this a little bit. It's a little glaring on me. Okay, we'll see. Now it seems dim. Is that better? So the other day I had said that, I said something felt funny about the shapes behind me. Do you remember I said that? The shape of the space behind me? It wasn't the space behind me, but it was the shapes hanging in the space behind me. So if you see the garlands that my kids and I made a couple of years ago, they've been hanging in the window. So there's the masculine form, which is straight and square. And then the feminine form that is circular. And check out the garlands behind me and which one is dominant, which one's on top. I find that fascinating because I did not do that on purpose. I didn't even notice it. And I was thinking, okay, if we're looking for equality, I've been asking, how can I adjust, where can I adjust the equality? Because the other thing, it's interesting when you work with other light workers, you can kind of tell who's working on the same thing in various task forces, like I said yesterday. So Sarah Adams and I often are working on the separately, but on the same thing. So we're comparing notes. And a couple of days ago, the day that Facebook broke down, I couldn't do the live feed. I went on with her, and it turns out that we had been given the same identical information. I don't know why my head is bothering me. Yeah, you tell me. We'd kind of been given the same information. So she taped it on Zoom and she posted it on my Facebook wall. So you can go take a look at that. I've kind of gone over a little bit of the same information, but we were talking about transmutation, and it was interesting. Portions of the conversation, even though I repeated elements of them yesterday, it was interesting, I think. But take a look at the garlands. So on the top is the straight and masculine linearity is on top. We actually need to reverse these. So the garland on the bottom behind me, that's also in the shape of a reversed arc, it is an arc, is beneath. So we need to bring it back to a state of equality. So I think what I'm going to do is restring it. I'm not going to do it right now, but I am going to take them down because I wanted you to see them. And then I was thinking, I haven't decided what this means yet. This is an old, somebody gave this to me. It's a Christmas garland, but it somewhat reminds me of a kind of bastardized DNA. Anyway, I'm going to take this down Uh, but I found it fascinating because 2 live streams ago or something, I think it was in the second live stream, I said the shape behind me feels funny. It feels like something's wrong with it. And that's what was wrong with it. And as soon as I saw it this morning, I thought, oh, I heard myself say it and then I remembered. So the point that I'm trying to make is that no matter what happens in a live stream, it's going to wind up being relevant, whether you think so or not. That was interesting. Anyway, so where was I going with this? There really is an awful lot of information. And I have 3 separate notepads. Yeah, so there's this. Hang on. I feel like tonight may not be, I hope it's not a real long one. Oh, that's another thing. All right, where should I start with this? Where should I start? I thought I was organized. But also you can't plan completely. Okay. I will start with geometry because we seem to be on the subject of shapes. So 2 things have to happen. We were talking about women's body, but somebody said one of the funniest things. Oh, and I'm seeing 11 likes and 11 comments. Thank you. Good for us. I woke up this morning and somebody had sent me $55 toward a new phone. And she said, I love this. I said, can I use this? Because that was a really good term. She said, I too was blocked in the chalice. Blocked in the chalice. I think we're going to borrow that phrase. I like that very, very much. So the good news is I'm getting a new phone on Tuesday. I paid for it today, and I will be receiving it on Tuesday. That's good. So after the live feed last night, I went to bed and I was told the reason, because I was still wondering, why haven't I been able to do this myself? Why is this something that must be so public? And even though I know, now I get it, but no matter how much I prepare, I head into this terrain and I just kind of get all fucked up. I'm not crying. I'm just confused so far. So there are 2 reasons, to the best of my understanding at the moment, there are 2 reasons why I have to air information publicly and why it has to be personal information. And no, it doesn't. Blocked in the chalice means no. It means we were talking about virginity. It means being blocked. We were talking basically about virginity and not being able to receive. So you want to open the birth canal so that the physical force can come in, but it also relates to free speech as well. Absolutely. And there was a session that I did. Who was it? I can't remember who it was. Oh yes, I do remember who it was. And we were specifically working on issues with the church body image. She's the one where I recognized what we were talking about. Yeah. And she's a physical therapist too. And we were working on, um, I'll get to that. We were working on opening the channel at the sacrum level, and then also opening the throat chakra and the root chakra, which have been sealed because women were prevented from speaking, especially in the Joan of Arc lifetime. And also, if you go back to the Queen Esther lifetime, if you've read that story, same energy string, same triangular dynamic. At that time, Queen Esther was not allowed to, wasn't allowed to speak to her husband unless he spoke to her first. So it was under penalty of death, certain death, that she approached her own husband after he had not spoken to her in 30 days. He had totally ignored her. And in that light, that was King Ahasuerus, sometimes called Xerxes. And that's an important thing to know because we're going to get to that later. Not today. In the fun part of disclosure, there's fun part of disclosure. And all of these lifetimes, the names that, it makes so much sense when you see the whole thing. And so little sense when you don't, unless you have the aerial view and you can make the connections when you see it from above and you see all of it at once. And you're like, oh, I see what happened. It spelled something. I didn't get it until I saw it all laid out. But now that you mention it, I see it's all there. So I had said, I've complained a couple of times, more than a little bit, to my guides, saying, why, if I don't want to do a live stream, why do I have to deliver this information? What is it about the being the messenger that I have to, why is that so important? And in public, why is the public thing such an issue? And one of the things I said is, what do you think it's such an issue for you for? And I did, it makes me squirmy for a reason. And the big locking spot for me is all the Joan lifetime, because everything that happened in the Joan lifetime, because I was merely the first being in the body, but everything spun out and multiplied because I was a template being. So every single thing that happened, good and bad, to Joan of Arc, the being, turned into a perpetuating circumstance because of the energetic circuitry. It went in both directions. It spun off into some really fucking hideous stuff. Hideous. Everything that happened to child stars and Disney and MK Ultra, that all started with the Joan of Arc lifetime. Child stars being sexually exploited, or hypersexualization of children, things like that, a public display. So one of the things you should know, and also body image, body shame. One of the reasons, and you may not know this if you didn't watch the movie or read the book, you wouldn't necessarily be aware, but I can tell you that this is absolutely the case. There was such importance placed on Joan of Arc's virginity